designing and creating a body kit is only one part of the total puzzle that you're working on. You can make it look wild and crazy, but does it actually work at all? So you lowered your car, you put these giant wheels on there, and now you have zero adjustability in the actual functionality of your car.
Everything that I did to my Datsun to make it look cool, it needs to change because it's just not a very good driving car. As much as I love to look at it, I also like to drive it, and I don't want it to just be sitting around so I can look at it. And so functionality versus aesthetics.
There's probably lots of people out there listening that are like, damn, that Tim has a sweet voice.
Soothing.
Just soothes me.
I gotta show you this fan review.
Oh gosh. Of the podcast.
No, this was his feedback of me. You just don't understand. He's a genius. He's an engineer. He's brilliant. Wow. He builds things that people don't think are possible.
Wow.
I was like, no shop tours for that guy.
Oh my gosh. Wow, that's amazing. Sounds like a book review.
I know, right?
Of like, oh my goodness, that's legit.
Yeah, that's too much though.
You can't take the fate where you're just getting red.
Now when I leave my house in the morning, I look out the door like,
who's watching me?
You can almost see him flushing out a little bit over here.
Yeah.
Surprise!
Oh my gosh. Well, welcome to another episode of Modify with TrickFactory Customs. If this is your first time listening or watching, my name is Elvis.
Tim.
Rob.
And we are a custom shop located here in Canada, British Columbia. And we build custom cars, and we love to talk about cars. And in the last episode, we started the conversation about building a custom body kit yourself. And but that was a long one, but we didn't get through everything that we had to say. And we also left it open to conversation with you guys, our amazing listeners, on potential questions that you had if you needed to build a body kit. And we got quite a few. And so we're going to be answering the questions of the people in this episode, as well as talking a little bit more, diving into the conversation more about building a body kit, because a lot of people were interested in this episode. It's been pretty good. I was looking at the ratings today, and a lot more people than I thought are listening every week. It's pretty amazing. Before we get started, how's it going? What's happening? It's been very busy.
It has been very busy.
It always is busy, but
I just reflected on your post that you put up as to what we've been up to for the last month. It's like, damn.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's been busy.
Lots of vehicles shifting in and out. Lots of potential new things on the horizon. We've been talking with a lot of people and expanding on our network a little bit. But in the shop, I've been busy working on the Skylark. It's been an ongoing project. I'm deep in the super custom hood that I'm making, and the amount of time you're going to have invested in that hood is going to be worth more than all the cars that I own. Yeah, honestly, like I'm trying not to think about it too much like that. It's super custom, but it's one of the major focal points on the car. It kind of like sets the tone for it all, and I can't wait for the world to see it. Sweet. And then we have some, I don't know if we can talk about it yet, or we should wait until announce it. Collaboration with some people or some.
I think maybe we should wait.
We should wait. Yeah, we have some collaboration.
We got some details to flush out, but it's pretty crazy.
Mm-hmm. So excited for that one.
So we got to pull the standard social media, like,
something is coming.
But like a thing that happened today that was kind of cool. Like, Monster reached out to us.
Yes,
and then they just came by the shop just not long ago and hooked us up with a free fridge and
a bunch of
whole bunch of NOS and Monster energy drinks. So it's just full. And
so are we sponsored by NOS and Monster?
We're probably going to be fueled by them at the very least.
Most definitely. Yeah,
and potential sponsored. I guess sort of.
I don't know. We're working on it.
They invested in the by providing us with drinks. So
so super cool. I mean,
they came through and set us up. So maybe that's a relationship we will expand on in the future.
Yeah, so that's pretty awesome. And then AMG GT or GTS with the body kit. That is going so far so good. The guys have been working on that nonstop all week. And a lot of changes have to be made or have been made. Because again, if you don't know about this car, it was dropped off from another shop because of some complicated things that they were in over their heads on, and they did not do the proper things, some things properly, all of that. But it's at our shop now, getting a body kit on, and carbon-ish.
There
body
is
kit.
carbon aspects to it.
Yeah.
Yes, and it looks like it's going to look amazing when it's done.
Oh, it will.
Yeah.
But the way they approached it was from the outside in, whereas we're approaching it from the inside out.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's one of the things about body kits is like Tim touched on it in the last time we were speaking of body kits, was just how important it is to sort of finalize and solidify the mounting situation of your body kit before you're ever, before you get into the exterior, sort of the aesthetics. So that's what we've been working on with that kit, is we're getting that mounted. It's 100% going to be secure in every way that it needs to be, and then we're gonna dig right into that.
So yeah, much like what we were talking about, we reinforce all the mounts with carbon fiber, backed a lot of the big panel expanses with carbon to give them some rigidity, so when we do start doing body work, it'll hold shape. So it's
just like strategic placement of like, the strands of carbon toe and using that in a way that's a little bit more engineering sort of style.
Yes.
Like we're using it for the strength that it represents.
Not for the aesthetic,
Not
because this is all
necessarily for the
internal.
aesthetic.
Yeah, it's all of the backside.
Yeah.
Because it's also interesting when the guys were showing me before they applied the carbon, like whenever you touch the body kit from the outside, it would kind of flex up and down. There was no rigidity behind that. And so that was really, really interesting. Also, you're talking of like the mounting spots, like they're doing it now, but like reinforcing all of that was very, very interesting to me, at least. Just because, again, it didn't have a lot of strength in those, and like the surface area was not big enough. So expanding all of that and making it match to where you guys are talking of like inside, building from the inside out, making it look or line up and look almost like it's OEM, like lining up with the exact Mercedes like the spots they provided.
Points.
Yeah. So that is pretty cool. That's been pretty cool to watch the guys do. But that also leads into our conversation: is carbon fiber overrated? Because I feel like today or these days, it has almost become like a thing of cosmetics, or people just use it for cosmetics. To you guys, is it like an overrated material to be used in cars, body kits?
I wouldn't say overused material, but definitely from an aesthetic standpoint, it does.
Yeah.
It's funny because I mentioned to Brett this morning, I have carbon splitters on my car. I was like, we need to pull these off and paint these.
Really?
I'm just over it.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Why? Like you just...
I don't know. I think you mature and transition and you want things to make sense.
and not just look cool.
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah, so I mean, if you think about it from the aesthetics, like overrated, overdone use of carbon, you could argue that. I mean, there's a lot of car examples out there, aftermarket manufacturer body kit stuff, where the whole thing is exposed carbon, and in many cases, it's a little overdone. It's a little too much. Tastefully exposed carbon in amongst really nice paintwork is a little bit more mature. A little bit. It's like a really intense flex. Like if you have a full carbon body and you paint it, it's like you're not really being going like, hey, look at me, I'm all carbon.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's carbon.
Yeah.
Those that know.
There is something interesting though. Like this is just a me thing, but carbon is cool to me, but well,
because it's almost become like a finish.
Yeah.
It's not really,
Yeah.
You don't see it used properly a lot.
True.
Until you start looking at production cars like GT3 RSs and you start to see it being used for what it's actually meant to be used for, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think we probably see it overdone and overused if you're thinking about it in like a sort of standard sort of wet layup overlay kind of sort of style, where it's literally just something on the surface, or a wet layup. It's like it's done by hand and it's like oversaturated with resin and blah blah blah. It becomes weaker when you oversaturate it with resin.
I didn't even know that. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you
Really?
think that it's going to be stronger, but it's actually weaker.
Why?
There's a ratio
Okay.
of cloth or weave to resin ratio that is ideal.
Yeah.
And that needs to be sort of kept as close as it can be for lightweight and for strength.
That's interesting.
So
I
like
didn't
you
know
get
that.
like you get like engineering properties with carbon fiber that most people don't usually talk about, and I'm not super learned in that respect either, but I try to learn as much as I can. And if you use it in the engineering properties, it's really, really fascinating stuff. If you're doing it just for looks, yeah, maybe it's overrated.
Yeah, because I almost forget that carbon is also strong. Like I almost forget that it's all. Again, I'm used to seeing it just for aesthetic reasons.
Yeah.
Which
When
is
you
pretty
think
much
about
the
it,
norm now, and that's why. And we see so much bad carbon that I think that's why people are tending to disassociate themselves with it, because there's just so much bad, cheap, double-sided taped. Like it's
man, we've had like body kits come into our shop for really high-end cars from like high-end body kit manufacturers that are carbon, and you look at them and you look at the backside of these things, and it's hell. It's so overblown and it's horrible.
Yeah.
And the thing with carbon is you don't really have, like, if you're going to use it for that, the process is you can't really back it up. There's no opportunity for body work. There's none of that. It's
I see what you mean.
so it's definitely a lot harder to work with.
Yeah.
And a lot of that stuff is laid up right over top of the existing part, so it never fits good. It's just
Cheap stuff
cheap
anyways,
stuff,
right?
Cheap stuff.
Yeah.
So like for us, when we do a lot of stuff, when I get excited when you see an actual carbon fiber replacement part.
Yeah.
Like the Blackwing we just did.
That's a good.
The mirrors came, and like I was like, oh, are we putting mirror caps on this thing? And you take it out, you're like, oh, this is
Actual
legit
carbon.
proper carbon fiber part. That's when you get excited. But normally it's just double side, or you'll see carbon parts like glued on with silicone and
Yeah,
like
it's
ugh.
not good.
Yeah, so shit.
So
Yeah. And then what about chopped carbon, or what did they call it? Forged carbon.
Forged in quotations, air quotes.
And
Yeah.
so, like, what about forged carbon makes people so nuts? I do not understand that. Like,
Yeah.
and they charge more. I think Lamborghini started doing this with
They had the whole
with the Huracan or something.
yeah, they're
Evo.
the ones that actually developed it.
Yeah.
But like they've been using chopped strand fiberglass for boats and you name it forever.
Yeah.
And then it's just an evolution of that. So it's like, it's marketing genius.
I know it's
It
pretty
is
like,
marketing
let's just
genius.
use our waste.
Let's use these chopped up waste pieces and just toss it in there.
So when it's legitimately
So
forged,
smart.
I'm sure it's way stronger. But what we're seeing it in is like aesthetic stuff, and it's probably has almost no strength.
So is forged carbon stronger than, or not forged? Like chopped strand carbon. If it's forged, is that stronger than normal like woven carbon twill?
I don't know if it is or not.
I mean, you'd
'Cause I
have
haven't
to
really seen
do
it
some
in
legit
those-
science testing.
Those uses. So I'm gonna guess and say probably not.
I'm going to say not as well. I think that if you properly orientate the strands of the toes of your fiber weaves through the products in the correct manners, you can create crazy strength as you're going from, say, one side of a part all the way through to another side of a part. Whereas in the forged carbon stuff, it's literally just like, say, as an example, 1 inch long section of carbon toe overlapping in a random pattern all the way from one side to the other. And like, what kind of strength can you get from that? It's not continuous.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right?
So if it's bagged and forged legitimately and done in an autoclave, I'm sure it's amazingly strong. But in a wet layup, it's pretty much just cosmetic.
Yes.
I still think like even in a forged state, it's probably not
probably.
as strong.
I wouldn't think so either.
I'm gonna say that is most
Because if it
definitely
was,
probably true.
it would immediately be cheaper to manufacture. And if it was stronger, we'd be seeing it used in like
yeah.
Cohensigs wheels
Yes.
and all these type of parts, but we're not seeing it. So maybe
Maybe
it's coming. I don't know, but I haven't seen it yet.
It sure looks cool with a
looks-
super deep glossy clear coat on it though. It looks amazing. I mean, there's a reason why I did it on the roof skin for my Porsche.
Yeah, but yours is also a blend of, it's like, it's not the whole thing that's forged, right? Like, or
No,
that
I
look,
just
right?
did the forged carbon on the top visual part of it, but on the backside. And so to bring context to this, I did a slick top carbon fiber roof skin for my 996 Porsche.
Not an overlay, like a legitimate replacement.
So
panel.
I pulled a mold off of an actual steel slick top roof, and then did chopped forged carbon as the visual layer. But then I did multiple layers of the twill weave orientated in opposing ways
Nice.
to create strength, like those toes that I was talking about, create strength from side to side and diagonally underneath all that. So you can't see it from the top side, but it's there.
Your
So-
roof does look pretty sick, though.
It's pretty sick.
Like, it looks awesome. And I like it. You put the TFC logo in it, did you? Oh,
Yeah. So I did that using the 2x2 twill.
yes.
And I did like I bonded a veil coat on the backside of the twill to make sure they don't move around. And then I cut the letters and the Porsche emblem shape into that after the fact. So it's super precisely cut. And then I did like the herringbone pattern, so they have a center line coming out.
Yeah.
And I put that on the top surface, so you can see it.
People that don't know, they're like, well, what are you talking about?
You'll see, because my car is slated to go into the
It looks
shop for
pretty
paint
sick.
soon, so
Yeah.
the roof will be installed.
And on our Instagram, like, you also did a similar thing to your seats as well.
Yes.
Where you backed them in carbon, but then also mixed it with some chop strand and did the whole logo with the herringbone thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It looks so good.
I mean,
so good.
You gotta see it through from end to end, right? Like, it's part of the design aesthetic that I was going for, and it's a pretty easy thing to do. On my seats, as the example, I didn't do vacuum infusion or anything like that. I actually just did that straight wet layup,
yeah.
because it's just a little bit of labor time for me, and just wet, let the resin dry, block it out, resin it again, block it out over and over and over again.
That was a lot of work.
Very, very labor intensive. I do not recommend it unless you have a lot of time and you just have to have it. I did it to my mirrors as well.
Yeah.
I did a chop strand wet layup on those, and I would not recommend that to my worst enemy. Do not do that. It was a nightmare.
And filling in the pinholes and all of that.
Because
I
of the
remember
shape. Because of
agony.
the shape, it was not easy to do.
Yeah. So that's just one piece of the conversation that I just wanted to have. And so do you, before we move on to the next topic, do you recommend people doing their stuff in carbon, or should they just use fiberglass if they're doing
What
a
are we
kit?
talking about, though?
Body kit.
Making a body kit?
Yeah.
I would say make the first iteration of it in fiberglass.
Yeah. I mean, for no other reason
very
other than
inexpensive.
it's more cost effective.
It's way less expensive.
Yeah. It's way more cost effective, and there's zero problems with using fiberglass as opposed to carbon fiber. I think a major misconception most people have is that they think that fiberglass is way weaker than carbon fiber, and granted, it is a little tiny bit weaker, but if you use it according to how it should be, you can make it amazingly strong. So.
And when you're laying them up, like if you're doing, let's talk about like mixing materials, for example, because we didn't talk about it last week, but because some people, and same thing with all these kits, some of them they say it's carbon fiber, but it's fiberglass on the bottom. And
Yeah.
then
I think they should
carbon
put it on the
top.
box, kind of like some of these, like, may contain carbon fiber.
Yeah, actually, and like, so a lot of the overseas things that we get that are fairly inexpensive, like you go on eBay or whatever, and you like, oh wow, a whole lip for the front bumper of my car is only $120.
Yo,
that's amazing. In carbon. Yo, don't expect a lot out of it. It may fit your car, it may look like carbon, but it's like 95% fiberglass with a single layer of carbon.
It's generally, like a single layer carbon backed with fiberglass.
And you know what? There's zero wrong with that. But don't have, overly high expectations thinking it's going to be some kind of race car parts. It's not.
I did that with my wing, my 370Z. When I had it, I got this eBay wing for it. Hot boy wing. It was glorious. Then we were like carbon, but it was only $100. I was like, this is the deal of the century.
Yeah.
And I got it, put it on the car. After, was it a year of using it?
Turned yellow.
Yes, it started yellowing and delaminating a little
Oh,
bit.
wow, really?
Yeah, and so you could see obviously that the fiberglass was underneath and it was not very good.
Yeah, that's
so
unfortunate.
yeah. So if you think it's carbon, you have to be sure that it's actually carbon from a reputable
Well,
manufacturer.
that's like a testament to the cheapness of the resins and stuff that they use. So even if we get parts like that, because we've had customers that have used it and it makes sense sometimes, is we'll scuff that stuff, and then because that resin that they're using lacks UV, that's why it turns yellow and that's why it starts to degrade right away. So we'll scuff it and shoot it with like a high quality, like high solids UV clear. And it stays black, looks great.
Nice.
Yeah, and it just looks better right away anyways, because way
So a lot of
your
carbon products will come to you unprotected. And it's a real thing, but most people don't know.
Yeah.
See, this is a real thing, and we discovered this. I mean, this is a normal thing. Major body kit manufacturers out there making real carbon parts. You know, they expect you to do your due diligence and clear coat it before you go into.
Especially if it's a legitimate carbon fiber part, because in their mind, it's being used in like a race
car
use
scenario,
so you don't worry about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's either going to be painted, wrapped, or something because it's a race car part. But if you want to use those parts on the street, you need to protect them, and most people don't.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I did not know that either.
Yeah. Yeah. So you spend a lot of money on these kits, and they're just amazing. They fit really well. Some of them, right?
Some of them
like
do,
we've had some that are amazing. Like we did an NSX once with a kit on it, and it was really, really nice. It was great. But
Also unprotected.
The whole thing was unprotected,
Wow.
and it needed to be clear coated.
Yeah, that's
So-
If you're going to use it on the street.
Yeah.
And now let's move on to another way to make body kits, which
Oh.
is
Paper mache.
no, no. I was gonna say P, but plastic welding or like fabricating polyurethanes. Is polyurethane a good material for a body kit?
Not really.
I don't like that stuff as a body kit. No.
Really?
No, I mean,
If you look at all those sort of sagged out, deformed body kits from like I think the 90s, a lot
Yeah.
of those were polyurethane, because the problem with fiberglass is generally it's really rigid.
Okay.
So you tap a curb, you crack your thing. You got to be a lot more conscious of what you're doing and more careful. Whereas the big selling feature when that came out was hit the curb, fold
Just
that sucker right
flexes
under, it
in.
comes right back.
yeah.
But it doesn't last. Especially that quality, like OEM quality is great, but that's a much different process and the way they produce those parts. So the ones that you buy that are like that, they're poured into a mold.
Oh, okay.
And again, it's the quality of the products they're using. Like you'll get like, bacon
Waving.
fenders, and your bumper will be sinking in.
Pull it
Your
out of the box, it looks like
your
this.
bottom chin starts to sag. Like it's just, it's not great.
Yeah, you
I'm
always
not a huge
notice
fan
like
of it.
those ones, like they had no provisions for like mounting it. Like say your front bumper and like the whole horizontal leading edge of it, right where it goes up to your radiator, like there was never any provisions for it. You'd have to like come up with some sort of solution to support that whole thing.
Because if you didn't, it would just
start dipping,
Yeah.
right? And so I never really was a fan of the polyurethane body kits
Really?
of that time, because you got to put so much more thought into it. And now you're thinking about like different materials and how they sort of translate to expansion and contraction on a hot sunny day. Like, and here in Canada, we get like 30 degrees Celsius plus weather. So you get a nice hot day, and then the polar opposite is we'll get days that are like fucking minus 30.
minus 30, that stuff turns to glass.
Yeah.
Like imagine that. Like it's an interesting challenge just where we live, is we got to sort of like come up with solutions to build for that. I never really did like urethane for that.
And another real big problem with it, and I don't know why, it must be the chemistry of it, is really hard to get paint to stick to it.
Really?
Yes, because and you would see it all the time. Paint would be flaking off, and you'd be like,
Delaminating.
well,
So like the prep is crazy. We have specialized products for it now, so maybe it's probably not an issue anymore. But at that time, it was like paint was flaking off, all that stuff. You
Yeah.
tap it one time, the paint's coming off.
That's interesting.
yeah, it's just a different way of going about the thought process and how you approach it. It's a lot of work. I just don't like it for that.
Yeah.
For like both of those reasons.
And then the plastic welding, I don't really know how you would apply that to a body kit.
My thoughts are like if they were thinking of using, like for example, a 3D print or a 3D printed part, or like we were just talking about before now, of 3D printing a body kit in multiple pieces and joining it together is like, and maybe using ABS, for example.
Okay, so that's one thing that we should address on here.
Okay.
These guys that are 3D printing stuff, you can 3D print with like PTEG. They make one specifically for mold making, but it's not an end use material. So if you're going to try to use end use material, now the cost of your 3D printer is like, you can get entry level and make something with PLA or PTEG and get away with making a mold. Not PLA because it's not really heat stable, but there is heat stable PTEGs for mold making that'll take the thermal of the resins, because it does make a, I can't remember, there's a fancy term for it, I can't remember what it is. It creates heat. So that'll
Exothermic reaction.
There you go.
Ding.
Chemistry.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, that's the one. So I was trying to sound real smart, but it didn't work out.
It's all right.
So thanks for filling it in.
Oh, you're welcome.
So to get a printer that's capable of printing in an end-use product like ABS is probably 4 times more than one of these cheaper,
Oh my God.
lesser expensive 3D printers, which are great to get you into the game to start playing around and making some things. But once you start printing in ABS, the quality of the machine needs to be a lot better. So you need to, if you're going to use it end use, like we have one because we wanted to start making end use parts with it. And another problem with like PETG and PLAs is really hard to glue together. Like it's hard to find something that,
And we discovered that the hard way.
Yeah, we must have tried 15 different adhesives.
Oh my gosh.
Just even to try to get it to go temporarily so we could pull a mold off of it.
Yeah.
So now that we've transitioned into printing in ABS, you have so many really high quality products and panel bonds that are meant specifically for ABS. So when you bond that stuff together, it's never coming apart.
So you don't recommend using like plastic welding to gum it, to put it together and then pulling a mold out of that?
Like it was good enough to pull a mold off of, but you wouldn't be able to use those
For an
parts.
end use,
like I'd like lay into it, and it would take some effort to break it, but you can't recreate that on a car. Like it's
That's definitely not something that if you were to make a body kit and plastic weld it, this is not an end use kind of game. Like the shock load and just the abuse of
So
actual
maybe
driving would
ABS
probably
plastic.
break it.
Okay, so but
It depends.
But
It depends on your procedures too,
and how
you
big of a
approach
body
it.
kit. Like if you're making fenders this wide, it's not going to work. You want to make like little over fenders, maybe some trim pieces, is going to work amazing. It's literally amazing. But again, the quality of the machine is now you're sort of leaning into professional quality level 3D printers to do that efficiently.
Have you guys seen the guy that 3D printed like or is 3D printing like an Aventador or something? I feel like we
I
could
never
probably
saw
have
it,
that
but
guy
I think
on
you guys were
because-
talking about that a little while
Yeah,
back.
that's an
weren't you?
amazingly huge project, but I don't think it's going to last.
But he was saying like why I'm like I had the question of it was so he 3D printed the part, but then I think he used PLA initially, but he used to give it strength. He wrapped the PLA with carbon. So
Yeah, that might be an
Do
option.
you think it'll? Yeah. So when I saw it, I was like, oh, that's interesting. That's an I didn't think about that, but that might end up giving it structure. I don't think we've ever tried that before.
There's no reason why that wouldn't work. I don't think that that's going to be a problem. I think that's just a whole bunch of extra time, expense, and I mean,
It's a solution.
it is a solution, probably not the best one.
Yeah.
So for him, like we touched before, depending on the types of resins that he used, he would have had to use something specific to that situation. Because if you use one of these cheap, fast ones, you probably would just make a big gooey mess.
Yeah, just eats it away.
So he probably used something decent.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I'd almost imagine that guy would probably changed his game just a little bit afterwards.
Yeah, there's some trial and error in that for sure.
100%. Yeah. I just love that story.
It's crazy.
I'm
Though.
like,
It's a crazy story.
With that guy.
Yeah.
I think he finished it though, didn't he?
Yeah, and like Lamborghini got involved. They gave him an Aventador for like a day or something. So he
Gave him
pulled
some headlights.
Yeah, like gave him
taillights or
headlight.
something.
That was really cool. Ferrari would just sue you.
I'd be like, nah.
Catch your car on fire, burn your house down.
So I feel like we need to have that guy on because it was really cool. Like
that's epic. Like he would be able to. Like how many years did it take him to do it though?
Yeah, it took him a while.
Like literally took years.
It took him a while. Yeah, I used Corvette suspension, I think, and like some other. So cool. But if you guys know that guy or know who he is, let us know so we can have him.
Man,
on.
it reminds me of some of like the videos that I've watched from like back east. There's like, I think they may have been like Malaysia or Vietnam or something like that.
Are they making
And like these guys are making. No, I watched this one where they took the white PVC tubing, they split it down the end like lengthwise, and then flattened it out. And then used those as panels and started heat forming and creating. Same thing. Like they made. I think the guy made like an Enzo Ferrari replica out of PVC pipe. And I'm just like watching this, going, "You got to be kidding me!"
That's insane.
And it looked pretty fucking good, man. I was like, "Damn, dude!" Like, props to these guys for their fucking commitment, because that's the
those guys go
major.
That made a Bugatti or something.
Yes,
they made a Bugatti. They've made a Wyra. They've made a bunch of stuff.
I'm like, this is the craziest thing I could have imagined. Try to find a staff here in Canada or anywhere here in North America that is willing to commit like that.
That's wild.
Yeah. We're going to model this out of clay from the riverbed that you have to go get first. And then once that's done, we're going to hand lay up an entire Pagani.
Hey,
With
man,
the Toyota
dreams can
Camry,
come true. Right?
With the Toyota Camry, what's it called, frame or something, or
It's
they built their
amazing.
own frame from like
galvanized fence tubing.
Yes.
Like actually.
Yeah.
But you see the clickbaity titles. It's like, my girlfriend dumped me because I had a crappy car, so I made a Pagani. You're like, okay.
Yeah.
But they're actually doing it, which is those guys. Like anytime I see those things on like Facebook, or it blows my mind that they can be so resourceful and make every single part, almost every single part of that car. Blows my mind. Like,
blows my mind too.
Yeah, but I think they're still in that transition period. Like, what do they say all the time? That like some of the craziest shit that we've ever seen built, like massive equipment. It's blah blah blah. It's like technology was expensive and labor was cheap.
Yeah.
Now labor is expensive, technology's cheap.
yes,
They're still cheap
Labor's
labor.
really cheap.
yeah, like really cheap. So it's like, oh, we're gonna put 8 guys on this at 25 cents an hour. It's like, it's not that big of a deal. Like you go to sleep, you wake up, you got half a car.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's so true. It's so true. But like the ability to see it through to the end, man,
Wild.
huge props.
I mean,
Anyway,
if it's the same guys that we're talking about, like they've done this for many cars, like a
lot of
few
cars.
Yeah.
cars, and I'm like, that
They
blows
must
my
be getting
mind.
some YouTube revenue.
100%. Their videos get millions of views, like
has to be.
each one. So that is really cool.
And if they're not, oh, that's a damn shame.
Yeah.
They deserve it.
Oh, and then someone was asking, what is the name of the expanding foam that we use?
We use a polyurethane pour-in-place foam. So there's all kinds of different brands. There's different weights of it, like densities. So you can get it like 2 pound, 4 pound, 6 pound, 8 pound, which you would probably determine based on how big of a piece you want to make.
And so you recommend for like, let's see, a full body kit, like bumpers, fenders, all of that. Would you recommend like a 8 pound, 4 pound, 2 pound?
Yeah, actually, and I just put an order in for some more today. Like one of our local suppliers, one of the brands that they're carrying is it's called Foamit, and I'm using 8 pound. It's the 8 pound density, and you can buy that in kits. It's a 2-part.
So like if you were to buy the
place.
2 pound, it's going to be really airy and really big.
Yeah.
And it's for like, you would see it in like
Boats,
buoyancies, docks where you're backfilling stuff.
Yeah.
So if you need to make really big moves, you would maybe start with that and then pour the 8 pound over
on
top
top.
of it to surface it and start shaping.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, so it's a 2-part polyurethane foam, and there's a bunch of different manufacturers that make it, and you just have to pay attention if you're going to be using it for shaping and then say fiberglassing over top of.
You're going to want to get a heavier
You're going to want a heavier density foam, so I would say minimum 4 or 5 pound density. 8 pound is really nice.
Yeah.
2 pound is too airy. But you can get it upwards of 20 something pounds of density.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
But I mean, you don't need that. Not for our
'Cause
applications
a lot of times
here.
what you'll do is you'll surface it. You can surface it with Bondo
Oh,
to
okay.
fill in all that and then
Yeah,
shape it.
then-
And like if you're pulling a mold off of it, you'd probably tape it or
Yeah.
then wax it and go from there. But you could literally make your plug out of this stuff and surface it with Bondo, shape
Yeah.
it, make it perfect, and then create your plug.
Yeah, that's cool.
So then you have that plug shaped, surfaced, and prepped, and then you pull your mold from that, and then pull a proper part from that. So that's a really effective way of going about it. 2-part foam is amazing. It's one of my favorite like sort of go-to things for really wild shapes.
And it comes in different expansions too.
Yeah.
So I think the standard, like the one that we use, is like 25-1.
Yeah, so the less density it is, the more expansion rate it has,
That makes
and
sense.
that's the trade-off.
Yeah, that makes
so
sense.
the denser it is, the less expansion it is.
So
It's just one of those kind of things. Yeah, you buy that, you use it, you just do it as per the instructions. You try to cheat it, you'll fail.
Yeah.
And you'll win if you do.
and you don't have to get in a hurry.
What?
You don't have to get in a hurry with it. Like if you were to try to do a big piece, you can mix a batch, pour it, mix another batch,
Yeah.
pour it,
Oh,
mix
it's
another
not
batch.
like
That's how-
fiberglass.
yeah,
It's not like a one
Bondo.
hit. Yeah, it's not like
Yeah,
that. So
yeah, and
it's-
that's definitely the way you would go about it, because there's like minimum and maximum thicknesses for the foam as an expanded rate. Like so, minimum say maybe an inch thick, maximum maybe 5 inches thick, depending on the density.
and you'll
right.
find when you pour it, the base will be more airy than the top.
Yeah.
So you almost want to build it in layers like that.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
Because
Yeah,
if you have
you-
to go down too far, you're going to start. It starts opening up and getting really coarse, and then it's a little harder to work with.
yeah, it's a really cool product. It's just one of those kind of things that once you mix part A and B together, you have literally like 45 seconds
To pour it in the hole.
to mix
it,
it
like-
thoroughly and then
it'll start
pour it
expanding
into your
right as you
space.
mix
Oh
it.
my gosh.
So
yes.
it's highly recommended to use like a power mixer, like at least get like a some sort of spoon attachment to a power drill and just mix it like that, and then get ready to pour. So like check all your boxes, make sure you're ready to rock and roll and go for it.
And then fender flare, or no, how to make custom inner fenders, because that's something we didn't talk about last time. Because as much as we like the top looking glorious and awesome,
Yeah.
you still need to make inner fenders to protect from like rocks,
Yeah.
rock chips, all of that. And what else do inner fenders help do? Make it look
Well, moisture,
Better.
it keeps rain from getting into areas where you don't want
Filling
that.
your bumper full of dirt, all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. So there's lots of different techniques for that.
So how would you
like
do that?
ones that we've used? Like if you're say adding a wide body to it, we'll use the existing fender liner as almost like a mold, and then create the extension off of it.
Oh, okay.
So like metal, like because we're our primary skill sets are metalworking.
So a lot of times, if you're just trying to fill that 4-inch gap,
Yeah.
you just form that out of metal, attach it, and then pull a whole new piece off of your
I
fender
see.
liner.
Okay, okay.
Or you can just add a strip. But if you're trying to create one completely from scratch, that fleece technique that we talked about would probably be a good one for that.
Yeah, it just sucks doing that one though, because like doing any kind of like overhead resining onto,
Yeah.
it's really messy.
'Cause
Like
you're
I don't
fighting
recommend
gravity.
that to
Like you're
anybody.
fighting gravity. It's dropping
Yeah.
from the bottom, and
It's-
But if it's super complex, it's really one of the only ways you're going to accomplish it. But
So
it
the-
is
the-
messy.
The big win nowadays, because like Tim said, technology's cheap and labor's expensive. Scan it, print it, and then
that's a lot of parts though for an inner fender. That's
hey,
huge.
If you want to have something that looks OEM plus,
True.
that's the way to do it.
Yeah, but that's big. Because thinking about what an inner fender looks like that's like that big.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's the nature of the game, though, man.
Okay.
This is not kid stuff.
So a lot of times, yeah, you're usually expanding on a factory fender liner. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
it's pretty rare that you have to make one completely from scratch.
yeah,
Right.
I think you should start by making something small. Because if anything, the internet leads you to believe that it's easy. And it's not easy. It's labor intensive. It can get expensive if you're using more product than what you need. And you just got to start with something small. Like don't jump in and think you're going to be making a bumper by Friday, because even just like the one thing that we've skipped with this whole thing is just even designing something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
True.
making a body kit, what does it look like?
That's so true. That literally, that's what we've been I've been struggling with so far, is designing this thing, because I did a body kit for my car, and it even took me like over a month just to go through kind of an idea of what I wanted. But now that my ideas have evolved, and like working here and learning more about like body kits and seeing all of the crazy things that you come up with your drawings and illustrations, and of course seeing the people that we have relationship with, Ash Thorpe, Carlos, all of those guys, it's very interesting to just see the possibilities, but it's also like, what is it going to look like? So let's actually talk about that a little bit.
So, you know, we look at that project and like immediately I just fall silent, because I'm like, of our relationship, it's like I'm one-minded, he's the opposite. So he's the creative, he has, you know, and then right away I'm like, how are we going to attach that? How are we going to make that work? And it's just like, that's a huge amount of work. So like, if all these renders that came out from all these automotive designers could stay the way they are, but there's a reason why they can't. Because it's like, yeah, this looks amazing, but now we have to try to make it work. So then they work it backwards and start packaging and putting all the parts that make this thing what it is in there, and then you see the end product change, and it's never as cool as we hoped it would be.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you're doing it strictly for aesthetics, it's completely different, because all that packaging is already finished. It's already there. You're just expanding on it, so it's easier. But it's still designing it in a way that it's going to function and last but I just don't feel like a lot of people do that. It's like fast food. They just slap it on and they get a month out of it. They're pumped.
Yeah. It is interesting, because that was like, it's just hard, because like you mentioned, like making it function is a different thing than actually making it, because whenever I see all these body kits online, like I don't think of suspension travel and gaps and all of these things, but that's the first thing you see.
Yeah,
and so
that's not going to work.
Yeah, and so that's so interesting, because as cool as you want, like for example, like I have seen one of like Ash's or Carlos's design that I want to do. There's this in their Make Haste Corp thing that there's this like Mustang. No, not a Mustang. It's like a Camaro.
Yeah.
Yes, and I saw that thing and I'm like, oh my gosh, this thing looks amazing. I want to take some of these features or these design elements and introduce it to mine. But the problem is, if you look at it, the wheel is almost touching the hood,
the back of the
past the hood, and there's a hump. Like you have the hood, and then there's the tire hump that goes past the hood. And so what does that tell you? That tells you can't really have regular suspension in it, because it's not going to work. Exactly, or turn the wheels. And so when a situation like that, you have to think of not just making the body kit, but also making that suspension work. And the way you make that work is probably with push rod suspension, so you can bring down, and now you're designing, pretty much building a whole car that's centered around the body kit, and it's just an endless circle of trying to make that design work. And so I feel like that almost has tamed my expectations or design. Like I'm like, okay, I can't go that wild. I have to chill a little bit, because I can't make all of this
we were
happen.
guilty of it in the past too, like putting stuff on air ride and all kind of stuff to create that aesthetic. But I don't know if it's just us maturing, but it's, what do you do with it when you're done with it?
Always have it lifted up, and it's just
And then it looks janky, and it's like, it's just not real. So like I say, the transition for us in the last little while is like the G-Wagon, like getting to see it go out and perform and do things and evolve and come back and have feedback, and we need to change this and adjust this, and like that has been really cool. Whereas this other stuff, it just doesn't work great. So it means, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a completely different conversation than what we're talking about. We're talking about making body kits, but it's
ties in though. It's still part of the whole thing.
Yeah, so you can make something that's just gonna make your, like, don't get married to a bad design that your car works and handles like shit afterwards. Most of them make it worse. Like I can think of a handful of body kits that actually improve upon your car. Like, can anybody name one?
Oh, I mean, there are kits out there. It depends on if you're trying to make it perform better on a racetrack or a street car.
Even a street car.
I mean, there's just not really.
It's
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think. So even for race
Maybe.
cars, I think what makes a lot of race cars in general, like you see the massive body kits they have and all that, is because they design brand new suspension for that car that then pushes the wheel out, and so then they have to cover that.
They have to cover it
and
up.
then it looks big and all of that. And so
Yeah, you're talking about like the engineering of the chassis.
Yeah.
And then, couple that with the marriage of the chassis engineering to the design aesthetic and the aero engineering that goes into the whole thing. I mean, it's a completely
I'd say
different
Porsche
game.
is probably the only one.
that does what?
Proper functional aero.
Well, there's
There's
lots.
other people.
There's other people, but I mean-
Porsche has been doing it really well for a long time.
Yeah, they've been doing it forever.
Yeah, because like with my Datsun initially, when I made the wide body kit, in the back, I didn't take into account that, when you put these massive wheels on tires, because I wanted an aesthetic in my head, when you put these massive wheels on tires with the fender flares, it all affects camber, caster, all of that. I didn't think about it. I just wanted big wheels that stuck out from the body of the car. And so now I have crazy camber in the back and the front has less camber, but it's all not adjustable because of the suspension. Because another thing that I don't think we even talked about before is just working with the suspension of your car in the whole design or in general. And so with this new thing now, like the Datsuns never came with adjustable, camber, caster, all of that in the back. And so now I've been thinking, but again, it's all downhill. Like I'm like, ooh, it's not going to work with the design. And I want to make it wider. Now I'm like, okay, I can't use that. And I'm thinking of using Corvette suspension for the back and the front. And it's just getting worse and worse. And I'm getting overwhelmed. And I'm like, I'm just going to abandon this idea. I don't even care about anything anymore.
No, but because I think designing and creating a body kit is only one part of the total puzzle that you're working on.
Yeah.
Like you can make it look wild and crazy, but does it actually work at all?
Probably
Probably
you're
not.
talking about creating an aesthetic that you had to have, and yes, so you lowered your car, you put these giant wheels on there, and now you have zero adjustability in the actual functionality of your car. So it's all just to look at.
Yeah.
And it looks crazy.
Yeah.
Actually driving it. So now you're actually driving your car, and your perspective has shifted, and your level of maturity on what you want is now shifting and evolving.
Yeah. And again, looking cool is one thing. The body kit looks sick, but then again, performance, driving, the wheels that I put on the car, again, the whole body kit, going out of this body conversation, I put these wheels, again, I wanted to achieve this aesthetic, but then they're so heavy. Each wheel, when we weighed it, was like
70 pounds.
almost 100 pounds
Yeah,
per wheel.
So rotating mass is crazy.
Insane.
Plus you've added all this extra drag.
Yeah. It's just not a very good driving car. And I feel like everything that I did to my Datsun to make it look cool, it needs to change, because as much as I love to look at it, I also like to drive it, and I don't want it to just be sitting around so I can look at it. And so a while back.
Yeah.
You can achieve both in a street car, for sure, but you have to accept some of the shortfalls.
Yep.
Because you're adding and you're taking away.
Yeah.
That's always the conversation. So at what expense are you doing it?
That's true. Oh, that's good. At what expense?
Yeah, that's just right. I mean, you take what was manufactured in a certain way, they made it so it kind of does everything kind of thing. Like it's the do-all car. Now you're gonna, I want it to look a certain way, so I'm gonna change it. Now it's gonna be better in this department, but worse in this department. It's like scales,
So you might
better
just
here, but
accept
worse
that
there.
You got camber and you're putting new tires on every 6 months.
That might
but
be a thing.
At the expense of the aesthetic, and you're like, I just love looking at this thing. I don't care. I'll buy new tires every 6 months.
Yeah.
That's right.
And I had that thought once in a lifetime a few years ago, but now.
But now you got other expenses and you want to be buying tires.
Yeah.
Because the tire wear is also uneven and all of that, and it's just a disaster. So
these are just like little things to think about, like when you're designing something like that. Like you wanted this aesthetic, and like me, after the fact, I can tell you, like you could have created that aesthetic, without lowering your car. You could have left your car suspension geometry exactly as it was, and then put your wheels on it, did your thing, but then created your body kit to fit the way that your car sat in an OEM stance.
Ugh.
No, not because you're not seeing where I'm going with this yet. Like, you could have brought the lips of your fender flares down and then lowered your rocker and lowered the height of
to
your
make
front
it
and rear
lower.
bumpers and brought those down lower to the ground and created what looked to be an ultra low car, but have all the functionality of OEM suspension. That's just one way of thinking about it that, unfortunately, you know,
There's not a single manufacturer out there anywhere that builds the body before they build the chassis. No. You think Porsche created that and they're like, oh no, now we got to put wheels under it? No, they created all that and then brought the body to where it needed to be for it to perform the way it needed to.
There's a delicate balance between your engineering and your artistic creativity that needs to be balanced out. Like, and you think about major manufacturing, you know, car manufacturers, there's probably like an ongoing battle between the engineering department and the design department. Design department. Like, it's a thing. Like, they're constantly like, it needs to look like this. And they're like, it can't look like that. It doesn't work.
Yes,
and they're like, make it work.
That's why you see sometimes design
I feel like I need to make
or concept. You see design or a concept car versus the actual production model, and they look completely different.
That's right.
Yeah,
you see, like, the
packaging.
prototype, always the prototype. You're looking at it, damn, that's sick, right? And then when the production car comes out, you're like, man, they watered it down a little bit. What happened?
They didn't water it down. They made it work.
Yeah,
Exactly.
That's it.
that's why it ended up that way.
Yeah.
And before we close, I just remembered something. We were talking about functionality versus design and all of that. The Porsche that we were praising about in general, they did something terrible that I just saw the other day.
Oh?
They took, you guys know I think it's the Panamera, like that V8 from the Panamera. The starter is inside the bell housing.
Yeah, but that's pretty common now. Like, there's lots of cars that are like that.
That is the dumbest design I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, why do I have to take off the whole transmission just to change?
Now, is the starter a weak link in that car?
I don't know, but I'm assuming like they changed it, so someone took it, and so I'm guessing it has to go out at some point.
Probably, but I imagine the reliability is quite high.
They tell you, to change a starter, $10,000 in labor, or not labor, but I'm just being exaggerating.
Yeah, there's a lot of cars throughout history of manufacturing that have had some seriously questionable things.
The first one that did
definitely
it was
not designed by mechanics.
Yeah, I think the North Star was the first one that did
North Star, they had it in the intake valley, right? Wasn't it?
The Cadillac mode,
Yeah,
or GM
the North Star. It was something crazy.
North Star V8,
like in the oil pan or some weird ass spot.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
So that's just think that's interesting. But anything else before we close out on this? We've been talking for like an hour now.
Yeah. What did we miss?
I don't know. Let me see if I can.
Bodykits?
Let me.
I think we got off on a tangent there at the end, but
We didn't talk about. I don't even think we even care about it. But safety and legal, like
safety and
the
legal?
implications. Just because in some places, like California, you can get pulled over for doing all of these things to your car.
putting body kit on it?
Yes.
Really?
Really? I didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, like
I've heard about
anything
it in
that's not factory.
like Europe and a few places like that, but I didn't know California is like the birthplace of all this stuff.
Yeah, but even here, like if I'm scared of taking my car.
I don't know if it's illegal here.
I'd
think
be
it
scared of taking
definitely.
your car out too.
I think it definitely draws more attention to you. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it's illegal.
I think it is. Like usually they're like any modification made to this vehicle, blah 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 blah.
Interesting.
So that's just one thing to think about before doing all of these things.
I
Because
think that comes down to enforcement, and if it looks like shit, they're gonna enforce it. Because I've been pulled over and they're like, "Damn, I don't even know what I'm looking at this, but this looks really nice," and I've never had a problem. With the VIs or anything like that.
Yeah.
Whereas if you got some thing that's barely hanging on there, looks like it's going to kill the person behind you, that's when you get VIs.
Yeah, no, and we use that mindset right there to sort of justify and sort of lead us on our decisions every day in our work. Is like, okay, how does this part look when it's on the car? And if it looks really, really good, it kind of leads you to believe the rest of it
Car is
is
good.
going to be good too,
that's
right?
good, yeah.
But if you
People
see something
complaining-
that looks like jank, it's like, what else on this car is jank? And it makes you start to question the credibility.
And
of
the
it.
people usually complaining about that are the ones driving junk. It's like they're harassing me. Like your car looks like it's falling
Yeah,
apart.
come on, right?
You
Look
got
at
a
the safety
straight
hazard.
piped fucking like. Come on,
Fucking tires are like
bald. You're
fucking
driving around on 2-inch strip
5
with
degrees
camera
of
right
camera.
now.
Oh
It's
my
fucking looking
gosh.
stupid, poking
Yep.
out.
So I think that's it. Thank you guys for listening to this one.
Yeah, this was fun.
watching. If you have any future topic suggestions, leave it in the description below. Comment on our YouTube channel. Give us a thumbs up. 5 stars to the ratings so we can get more people hearing us talk.
Yeah, give us lots of feedback and
Yes.
let us know what you want to hear us talk about, and we'll hit those topics.
And with that said, we will see you guys next week. Bye.